Paul goes on to say this, the body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. So here is the word that we need to look at in this first movement, this word immorality. The Greek word behind this English word is the word porneia. Porneia is where we get our English word pornography. But it's really a much larger term than that. It was an umbrella term that pretty much described any kind of sexual activity outside of the Genesis chapter 2 ideal. It was a junk drawer term where you could throw in any kind of activity outside of that circle. And so here's what would be outside of that circle. Fornication, sex before marriage, sex outside of marriage, same-sex sexual relations, polygamy, polyamory, pedophilia, prostitution, bestiality, cohabitation, sex trafficking, adultery, adult establishments involving the removing of clothing for financial tips such as strip clubs, nude beaches, clothing-optional resorts, massage parlors that involve immorality, and any kind of pornographic material in print or digital form. That's a big list. Now you might say, yeah, Pastor Dave. Some of you are going, get him, Pastor Dave. That's what we need to talk about here. But here's the truth. All of those things listed under the heading of porneia apply to all of us in some way, shape, or form. Paul gets all of us right here. I want you to listen very carefully. If you're visiting here today, or if you're watching here today, listen to this section of the message. We are not, in this church, we are not the good people telling all the bad people that they need to be good. Rather, we are the bad people who've been saved by the only good person who ever lived. His name is Jesus Christ. That's who we serve. That's who we worship. That's why we gather together on Sunday mornings. Now, the specific expression of porneia in this church, the church at Corinth that Paul is addressing, was the issue of prostitution. There was a temple to Aphrodite, the goddess in their town, and there would be rampant prostitution happening there. So Paul says, no, that's not an appropriate sexual expression. He says this in verse 15. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them members of a prostitute? Never. Or do you not know that he who is joined to a prostitute becomes one body with her? For as it is written, the two will become one flesh. But he who is joined to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. Notice again, verse 15, never, God forbid, may it never be. This immorality is not good. Now, why is this wrong? Look at Paul's reasoning. He says, sex is not just a physical appetite. Don't you know? It's a spiritual union. Sex in God's creation is like spiritual superglue meant to bring two individuals together. God has designed it in such a way to bring two people together. And we know this is true. Even from modern research, we know that chemicals are released in the brain, such as oxytocin, which creates a bonding between two people who are intimate with one another. The Hebrew word for sex was the word dode, and it literally meant the mingling of souls. Sex was not just an emotional or a physical tie, it was a spiritual union. It's not just a physical appetite. Paul says there's a context, there's a place where this is appropriate inside the covenant of marriage. Get outside of that covenant of marriage, Paul says it's toxic. In fact, he says this, flee from sexual immorality. Flee. The word flee there means run for your life. This is so bad, you should run for your life. Now think about it. This is the Apostle Paul. In Ephesians 6, he tells us when it comes to Satan and the devil, we should stand firm. We should face our enemy. We should resist the devil. He will flee. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. But when it comes to an opportunity for sexual immorality, Paul does not say stand your ground. Paul says, run, Forrest, run. You need to run like you're on fire. Don't wait around. You need to get out of there. Be like Joseph in Genesis. Run and don't look back. Why? Because sexual immorality is toxic, not just for you, but for everyone around you. There are consequences physically, emotionally, and spiritually to immorality. It can bring sexually transmitted diseases, out-of-wedlock pregnancies. It will break down trust in all of your relationships. It's toxic. Run, flee. Then he goes on to say this, every other sin a person commits is outside of the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own. You were bought with a price, so glorify God in your body. In case you didn't catch his reasoning here, Paul says, you belong to God. In other words, who made you? Who redeemed you? Who will one day resurrect you? The answer is God. See, one of their slogans in that day was, my body, my choice. This was the bumper sticker on the back of all of their camels. But if you're a Christian, God says, that's not true. Do you not know? Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Jesus purchased you with his own blood. He is your Lord. Paul says you belong to him. You need to submit to his lordship in this area. These were